Alright, so now we moved on to pre-flop, and now we're doing a little bit of post-flop stuff. So let's jump right into this situational hand. So what do you do if your opponent is check raised 50% of the flops? So let's see, you open, he flat calls, just c bet, and he's constantly check raising you. Um, Once again, there is 4 adjustments here, and once again, I'll give you some time to just jot those down. Alright, so number 1, tighten your opening range a little bit. Now, once again, and this becomes almost like a theme here with tightening our opening ranges. And the reason we're doing that, once again, if we tighten our opening ranges, when we do raise, it's going to be more value based. And when it's more value based, the percentages show that we're going to be hitting the board more. So when he is check raising us, we could call down and set him up and let him stack off, or we can just play a hand where we pretty much feel pretty comfortable that we're going to be ahead and we're going to be able to take the pot down. So tightening your range allows us to hit the board more, and overall that's kind of what we want. We want to be able to play hands with this guy who's very aggressive and know that a lot of the time we're going to be ahead. Alright, once again, start c-betting more for value, and 1 and 2 kind of go hand in hand, because if you do 1, 2 will kind of just come eventually anyways. If you're tightening up your range, you're going to be value betting for sure. But if you're playing against somebody who is check raising so much on the flop, and you just don't hit the flop, it's not the worst thing in the world to just check back and realize your equity. For example, if you have ace 3 in your range, and the flop comes like king 5-3, it's not necessarily a bad thing just to check back that board, because if somebody is raising 50% or more with his check raise on the flop, chances are he's going to be check raising that flop, and you're going to be in a situation where you can flat call with your ace-x, and hopefully he doesn't make it too pricey on the turn and river, or we can check the flop, realize our equity, and play a smaller pot with a hand that we think that we're ahead of. So it's quite an interesting situation, but like I said, if you just follow 1, 2 will become very easy. It would be a hand in hand, so it's really not that big of a deal. Number 3, check back bad boards that we don't hit, usually versus fish and stations. Now, this is something that I really don't like to do against players that are good, because it's very, very exploitable, and players who pay attention to realize, okay, he's not c-betting when he doesn't hit, and he's c-betting when he does have a hand. So I suggest only doing this versus very bad players. We're talking fish or stations. And they don't realize these type of things, and that's why we can do it against these kind of players. And once again, I think it's a rarity, but if you do run into this situation, just don't c-bet bad boards, because guess what, he's going to call, and then if we don't improve, we're either going to have to check the turn and have him bet the river and we're going to fold, or we're going to have to bet the turn and river and hope he doesn't make some ridiculous call with bottom pair. So situation when you're playing very, very bad players, just don't get in the habit of c-betting all these boards. C-bet, play ABCs, continuation bet when you hit, and don't when you don't. So it's fairly simple ABC type stuff. And that works against a lot of bad players. And number 4, 3-bet his check raise. So, and you could both do this for value, and you could do it as a bluff. Now, a lot of good players like to check raise a lot, and everybody knows like the good check raise boards like King 5-3 and 4-5-2 and boards like that, because of why? Because those boards aren't really hitting a lot of people's ranges, and if you check raise a board like King 5-2, it's going to be very, very hard for your opponent to continue without at least a king. Even if he calls with the 5, the turn and the river are going to become scary cards to follow with, so it gets very, very scary when the turn and river come and somebody's betting pot into you both times and shoving the river. So it's a situation where if somebody's check raising you a lot, and you just have that feeling and you have the note that he's just playing very loose out of position, there's no reason why you can't 3-bet his check raise and then see what he does from there, because a lot of players will fold in this situation if they don't have anything. So that's something a little more advanced, but at the end of the day, you want to keep that in your back pocket as well. Alright, on the flop part 2, let's jump right into this one as well. So when in the big blind and your opponent is opening 85% and c-betting 90% and barreling turns, what should be our adjustments? And once again, there's 4 answers here. and try to figure them out for yourself. And how this hand basically plays out is we're playing a very aggressive player who's opening 85% of the time. He's c-betting pretty much all flops, and when we're calling his c-bets, he's basically barreling turns as well. So he's not a shy opponent, and he's very aggressive, and he's very pedal to the metal type style. Very lag slash maniac here. So what are your four adjustments? And let's move down. So once again, if somebody's opening up 85% of the time, which is very high in heads up, you want to be 3-betting. You want to be opening up your 3-betting range, and based off the slide before, we already got into all that with value-based hands and bluffing ranges. But versus an opponent that we really know nothing about yet, we want to be opening up our 3-betting range for sure. Number 2, same as before, opening your big blind calling range. We've already gone over this, but it's something you need to do against these kind of lag opponents, and you always want to keep that in the back of your mind. These adjustments should be just drilled into your mind. It shouldn't have to be you have to go open up a PowerPoint or open up some kind of Excel spreadsheet. These adjustments need to be imprinted in your brain so you can just play on the fly. And that also allows you to start multi-tabling as well once you're so comfortable with just single tabling. Number 3, start check raising more boards. And if somebody is c-betting 90% of the time, well, guess what? He's not c-betting for that much value. So instead of just calling his c-bet and then dealing with the bigger turn barrels, that's something that you should definitely think about doing. And I would suggest more for a bluffing range, because for somebody like this, if you have a very, very good hand and a hand that you could handle the pressure of a barrel, why not just let him bet into you if he's always barreling turns? So in this circumstance, you want to be kind of opening up your check raising range for more of a bluffing range than a value range. And also call down wider. If we know somebody who's opening 85%, c-betting 90%, and barreling a ton of turns, call down a little bit wider. Your middle pairs and your bottom pairs will be good more than they should against somebody who isn't playing this aggressive. So don't be afraid just to call your stack down with middle pair. It's something that you have to get used to against these kind of players when you move up in levels. And this is a situation where it's scary, but you just have to get used to it. And like I said before, if you have a really, really strong hand, like let's say you have pocket kings and the flop is king 5-2 and he's c-betting, there's no reason to check raise there because he's going to be barreling that turn. So we want to get as much value as we can from this guy, so we're just going to flat his c-bet and then, let him barrel off to us for sure. But in the circumstances where we're just not getting those hands that make it like completely way too easy to play cards against a guy like this, we have to be able to adjust and realize our equity with like a bottom pair or a middle pair for sure. So these 4 things are very, very vital when playing against somebody who is very aggressive, and you just need to know these like the back of your hand. Alright, so flop and turn play. Here we go, doing some more post-flop stuff. So if you have a read that your opponent will only check raise hands with a stronger range, what should we be thinking when he flat calls our c-bets? Now there's one thing you should always be thinking here, and just reread this and just kind of understand what I'm saying. And I'm saying, if we raise and then continuation bet, and we have a read that he's only check raising our continuation bets with a stronger range, what are we thinking when he just flats our continuation bet? And what should we be thinking is that it's a weaker range, that it's a bottom pair or some kind of draw, or something that he's really not that confident in. So that should be something that we need to be thinking about right away. And these are the type of things that make you an elite player, is when you pick up these things really fast and you learn to adjust to that kind of player. So with a weaker range, what does that mean we should be more willing to do on the turn and river? Now, if we have a solid bulletproof note that he's check raising with a lot of his stronger hands, it's easy to say that he's going to be flatting with a weaker range. Now, if we know he's flatting with a weaker range, we should be barreling turns and shoving a lot more rivers. Why? Because it's going to be very, very hard for him to call turns and river bets with a weaker range unless he improves. It's a situation where he might be able to call a turn bet, but he's not going to be able to call a river bet that's either pot or shove, and that's based off how we set up our effective stacks. But it's a situation where we have that read, and there's nothing better than playing against an opponent who's going to be, flatting our C bet, calling our decent sized turn bet barrel, and then folding two river bets. Like, that's just him hemorrhaging chips to us, and that's what we want. So when you see this, you want to note it, and you want to put it to good use. And this is a very good example of how to. What I wrote right here is continue to barrel turns and rivers and just fire away. Don't be nervous about him making a really good call. A lot of the times people don't have it in them, and once you learn more about barreling turns and rivers and stuff like that, and that's a different PowerPoint. This isn't really the correct PowerPoint for that kind of stuff, and maybe I'll do something like that down the road. It's a situation where you just need to be able to put your reads to good use, and just do the plus EV thing. If you feel like he's weak and he can't handle the pressure, you bet turns, you bet rivers, and you get the fold. End of story.